Dheeraj.
Hi.
Hey. Good evening.
Yeah. Good morning.
Yeah, thanks, man. I was gonna say you don't know how hard it is for me to say good evening when it's this early in the morning here. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I just Raghav and I were just chatting, and so now I need to give me a moment if you guys would. I need to go pull up meeting minutes and get organized. And so in the chat, I'm going to pop in the link to the meeting minutes. All of you should hopefully have access to those. And I'm going to pull them up and share them. Assuming you have access, please help me with this. Please record your attendance. And actually, as we go, please feel free to take meeting minutes with me, because I generally have a hard time doing two things at once. So your help here will be good. I know I've only asked Nuno, I don't know how many times to take meeting minutes, but it's just I can't get him to do it. Where is the meeting? Very good, there's Gunjan. And Nuno, you know what's kind of nice about you being on mute is that that makes for a one-way street in terms of the harassment. That's kind of nice.
Yeah, sorry. Let me just turn on. So I'm on the train station as usual,
Oh yeah.
So everyone.
Oh, good. Just seeing Nuno in a parka makes me feel a lot better about it being 60 degrees here. I was feeling like it was cold, but now it's not.
No, forget it's getting like almost snowy here. So yeah.
Nice. Nuno, you'll be at KubeCon?
No, too far away, and didn't get the right sponsorship for this one.
Yeah.
So no, it's maybe KubeCon Europe. I don't know,
Yeah.
but I'll be following definitively.
Okay. I'll be at KubeCon EU, so. All right, good. So we're just about 4 after. I know there's going to be a few other folks who are going to join today, but maybe let's get going. So good. So this doesn't break a record, but it still warms my heart to both have two new folks on the call. So Raghav is with us.
Yeah.
And Dheeraj is with us as well. Guys, do you want to?
Hi everyone.
I think Raghav had to step away, but Dheeraj, do you want to introduce and just tell folks about who you are and your focus?
Yeah, surely. First of all, thanks for inviting me to this community call. I'm Dheeraj, and I work. I'm representing Citrix here. I work in Citrix, and I worked on this in like creating this Citrix service mesh, which is based on the Istios one. So you can actually go to the GitHub and search for Citrix Istio adapter. So that is like Citrix has like its own containerized ADC, which we are which we are actually installing in the data plane of the service mesh as a sidecar as well as the ingress gateway. So I have primarily worked on that, and I look forward to work on our Meshery work also,
Yeah.
the Meshery adapter of the CPX.
Oh yeah. So guys, it's been a long time since I've seen the type of work done that Diraj has done. Um, we'll have to. I don't want to put Diraj on the spot now, but we maybe next week we'll have to maybe even ask for a demo from you, Diraj, on the deployment of the Citrix CPX um, as the sidecar proxy. It's been like a year and a half since I'd seen any project do that. That's pretty cool. Um, yeah, and so yeah,
Oh, that's nice to hear. That's nice to hear. Thanks.
yeah, no, really. Last time, maybe I'll try to share it now. The last time that I'd seen that from a project, I didn't think it was going to actually happen again. Um, if the project was called Engine Mesh. I'm going to try to bring it up. Engine Mesh. So guys, so what this was is for Istio, when you deploy Istio today, the default service proxy is Envoy, and it had been shown a couple of times in the past that you could, the Envoy was the default, there was the battery included, if you will, but you could take that battery out, displace Envoy with Nginx or with Conduit with a different proxy. And the Engine Mesh project was just that. It was deploying Istio, but using Nginx as the proxy. And that I'd gone around and actually this is actually my diagram here, and I'd given a couple of webinars on that project, but it had been set down and more or less archived back in like the Istio.7 timeframe. And right now we're on like Istio 1.3, so it's been back in November. It's been a while. Anyway, not an easy feat to overcome. So instead of using Envoy, now you can use the Citrix CPX. So Diraj, actually, I'm curious, as you guys did that, was that you ended up writing your own interface to the Envoy XDS, right? And so now Citrix.
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct. We know that Istio Pilot is like XDS server. We came up with like our own XDS client, which we are calling it as the Istio adapter, and that is essential. And as you rightly guessed, it's an interface to convert our like this XDS APIs into the Citrix CPX. We do the configure Citrix CPX using the REST-based API.
Nice, yeah. I'd assumed that all of the proxy providers had more or less given up on that. So this is cool. Yeah, we're definitely going to have to spend some time either next week or the next week, just like to go through and see it. As a matter of fact, Diraj, actually, we're going to see it whether we want to or not. I think as you go to do some work on the Meshery adapter for CPX, we'll be seeing we'll be seeing it in action actually in the project. So it's exciting.
Oh, yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. Nice. And then Raghav, do you want to do a quick introduction?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Raghav. I'm currently in my second year studying in IIT Guwahati, and I have major in mechanical engineering, and I have some background knowledge of machine learning, some backend stuff like Django and Flask and PHP.
Oh yeah.
I guess that's okay.
Oh yeah. Very good. So you're in good company actually. Gunjan, you're second year as well, right?
I've completed my second year.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, I see. So Raghav, you're a third year rather.
Yeah, I'm in third year.
Oh, very good. And then Gunjan, is Ashish with you today as well?
No, sir. Ashish is feeling sick, so that's why Ashish is not attending to this meeting.
Okay, got it. Okay, that's too bad. Okay, and then guys, if you can help me with the note taking, because I'm not going to do a good job. Anyway, a couple of quick topics. So in general, I think may have mentioned earlier. So all of you know that KubeCon's coming up in, I don't know, a little over a week. Meshery will be presented at one of the day zero events at NSMCon. NSMCon is Network Service Mesh Con. So Harshini, who's in our community, I was just chatting with her earlier. We ended up releasing the Meshery adapter for NSM just about a week ago, and it will be presented at NSMCon. So that's fantastic. We're going to try to do a demo of that here on the call today. Another topic is that well, actually, since we're on KubeCon, let me also say that I've just gotten done establishing SIG network in the CNCF. So some of you have heard me say this before, but I used to chair the CNCF's networking working group, and working groups are kind of going away, and so now I'll be chairing the CNCF SIG network, which at some point is like the place where where we will likely take Meshery through. So the intention is to donate Meshery to the CNCF and bring it through there. And when we do, it'll be first kind of analyzed inside of this SIG. But the reason that this has to do with KubeCon is there's an intro and a deep dive on what that SIG does at KubeCon. The next thing is I meant to drop this into so all of you hopefully have access to the Meshery team drive, the Google Drive. I'm gonna.
Yes.
Okay, good. I'm gonna drop in there some research that Forrester has recently done. If you're not familiar with Forrester, they're an analyst firm. So they're like a Gartner, a 451 research. There's an analyst firm called Forrester. Let me share this. I think this is of interest to everyone, including Dheeraj, who helped on the service mesh landscape. So Forrester had recently put out a report on service meshes in general, broadly, and the kind of report goes through and introduces microservices and etc. and kind of talks about the landscape. And Randy, the VP who put together this research, he used the layer 5 IO service mesh landscape to put together an outline, to put together this structure that you see before you. So each of these, so Subham and Anand and everyone else who's helped on that landscape, your work is actually being represented here as well. And so Meshery is also represented then as an open source project. And it's also denoted as a manager. So he's a manager over Istio, Linkerd, and other service meshes. So it's so I had spoken with the guy who put this together, Randy Hefner, and made sure that he understood the place that Meshery sits as a manager of service meshes. And so kind of interesting. I'm going to double check on my ability to share this with folks. And if I can, I'm going to put it then into the community team drive so that you guys can, so you can see how your work is being used. Okay, so that was that announcement. Any questions on what Forrester is, or like what that analysis is about? Okay, good. Yeah, relatively straightforward. All right, good. Then, so I was hoping that either Harshini or Girish can join us today. Are either of the two of them on? No, that's okay. Right? We can still do this anyway. So, I think actually since last we met, we did two minor releases, fairly fast paced. Some of the work that you guys have done is very clearly represented in there. So if you take a look at Meshery 2.3, some of the status, the Meshery CTL improvements for Windows, Anand, your work was released in 2.3, so that's great. Another thing that we did here that we confirmed that hadn't been confirmed before was the ability to deploy Meshery on the mesh, the ability to deploy Meshery specifically on Istio. Most of the time that people are deploying Meshery today, they usually deploy Meshery on their local machine and then point Meshery at a Kubernetes cluster and have Meshery do service mesh deployments on that cluster. And a lot of times if someone is generating load, it's often the case that people want to generate that load outside of the cluster as if it was a user or some client of the services, generate a bunch of load, make a bunch of requests, and send that into the cluster, but sometimes people actually want to generate that load from within the cluster, and so there really wasn't any changes necessary here, but just a validation and a little bit of documentation around that. We had I think it was a Hacktoberfest contributor had moved, had updated the way that the chips look. So let me see if I can show you that real quick. So most of you have seen Meshery and kind of been inside the UI. It used to be the case that these chips, these little adapter chips, let me increase the. They used to show the port number that a given service mesh was connected on. Anymore, it just shows the port number when you hover over the tooltip. And so they're kind of done in order. I think the first adapter we had was for Istio. The second one was for Linkerd. Third was for console. Fourth, Octarine. And then fifth, NSM. And then Diraj, we'll see if the CPX adapter lands before there are two other adapters that are out there. One is for Kuma, and the other one is for May.
Sofa, probably.
Yeah, that is one. Actually, in this case, it's for. It looks like it's pronounced mesh, but it's actually just pronounced mesh. It's the the continuous. The continuous guys, they've committed to writing that adapter for mesh. I think they're distracted with KubeCon at the moment. So I guess in a good way you've got a chance to beat them to the punch.
Okay. Yeah, actually we are also right now working on the KubeCon side also, like Citrix side also, but we'll work on that also.
Okay. Okay.
On both sides.
Nice. So actually on the general announcements, maybe there's one other thing to say, and that's the general manager for the Linux Foundation, for training in the Linux Foundation, he lives here in Austin, which is where I'm sitting today. He's been asking me, but in some respects by proxy, us to create service mesh training. Much like the training that you may or may not have seen coming out of the Linux Foundation around Kubernetes and being a Kubernetes administrator, they're asking for that type of training to be created for service meshes. And so that's pretty exciting, because the reality is, for the intro level training, we will be telling people to use Meshery. in that training so that they can try out any number of service meshes, hopefully, again, like hopefully at some point including CPX, right? So I don't know that I've talked about that on the community call before, but that's exciting. That's just another avenue for your work to be represented. If you look at some of the statistics for how many people have taken those courses, like for the Kubernetes course, it's 92,000. For the Prometheus course, it's a little less than that. So anyway, you've got a real chance for your work to be shown very prominently. Okay, so I figured I'd walk through the recent releases just to make sure everybody's kind of seen the fact that your work has either landed or see some work that you haven't seen yet. So the latest release is 2.4. It's a couple of days old. I'm sorry, 0.24. That brings out the Octarine adapter. And here very shortly, we need to cut another release that brings out the NSM adapter. We also enhanced Meshery CTL in the way that you can deploy it. So let's demo these things right here. And we also got better script. And I think Pavan, if you're on, thanks to your help, we've got a better script around Meshery deployments interfacing with EKS and with GKE. And so the new script there has been included in the release. Oh, there he is. And so Ashish is with us as well. That's great. Okay.
Yeah.
So Pavan, thanks for kicking butt. Guys, I'm gonna pop the link to the meeting minutes into the chat one more time, just to really encourage everyone to go take minutes for me. So with that, actually, there's a couple of things to demo. I said that we now have a new way of installing Meshery CTL. So if you go out to the Layer 5 IO org, you'll find a new repo, this homebrew tap repo. There's been some update to the Meshery documentation to explain how to install Meshery CTL. A couple of ways right now to do it on Mac or Linux. One of those is with Homebrew. I think Homebrew is fairly popular with those that are using Mac as a package manager. And so the steps are these three right here. It's relatively straightforward. Let's give a quick demo of that. Has anyone, who all uses Brew? Anybody using Brew as their package manager?
Yeah, sometimes I use it.
Nice.
Since I'm a Mac user, yeah, I find it convenient.
Do you? Yeah. So yeah, I know Garish does as well. Yeah. So do I, because it just brings.
I do.
Pavan, you do as well.
I do. Yeah.
And Ashish, yeah. Nuno's Nuno's keeping it real with Windows. So good. So let's. I don't know, for what it's worth, we'll just do a quick demo here. So I think I have Meshery CTL installed already. I'm just gonna, so I'm on a Mac. I'm not running Catalina, but Mojave. The three steps that we just looked at, the first one was to add the Layer 5 IO homebrew tap. Like basically add that registry, add that repository to your homebrew configuration. And so this first command here is brew tap, and then you just reference the repo, layer5io/tap. That first command, like I said, it adds that repository to your registry, if you will, to your list of tap providers. The second command here would then install Meshery CTL. So let's run this first one. But for those familiar with other package managers, I mean, Brew is very similar in this regard. So you just do Brew install Meshery CTL. Good, good, good. Downloading, great. It picked out the right copy. And then some of you are already familiar with Meshery CTL itself, so I'm already running Meshery locally, just on Docker on my Mac here. And so something that people have not seen before is the fact that both Octarine and the NSM adapter are running. So that's great. That's a helpful thing. Girish, since you're on, do you want to demo one of the other capabilities of this last release, the NSM adapter?
Actually, we have demoed the NSM adapter twice in the last week and the week. I mean, like last week, since you were not there, I did try to demo it, to the team. Of course, it's definitely in a better state than it was last week. I mean, sure, if you guys want me to demo it, I sure can, but I'll need a few minutes to just set it up. I mean, probably another 3-4 minutes for me to set it up. Yeah.
I guess
I can get ready for the demo no matter what. Plus, other than that, I do have the other tiny thing, that's in progress still, which is actually the other load generator part. That's probably coming into Meshery. Hopefully by the end of today, there'll be a fully functional version. Yes.
Yeah, that would be great to see. Maybe while you're bringing that up, I'll just highlight the fact that probably what I'm assuming last week we didn't have NSM exposed in the UI, so now you can see it. That's good. So maybe I won't re-demo the things that have been demoed here, but since we're talking about adapters, Dheeraj, this is well, I guess let me ask this: as you've begun to familiarize with the project and consider your approach to your adapter, questions that are coming up, or are you comfortable with where you might get started?
No, Lee, so frankly speaking, I have not get a good chance to work on this one. So I was busy with some other work, official works also. So I just gone through this our Meshery site and this one, but I need to do the hands-on.
Okay, no, that makes no problem. Then Dheeraj, let me show you a couple of things that are consistent for each of the adapters, just to give you some familiarity. So
yeah, that will be great. Thanks.
Yeah, there's right now, in order to interface with different service meshes, each of them are unique, and so that's why each of them has an adapter. There is an effort underway to create a specification that is a common API across service meshes, and it's called the Service Mesh Interface. We've spoken of this one a couple of times, but part of it helping advance that Service Mesh API, that sort of common API, there's various partners out there that are doing it. Some that are much more engaged than others. But one of those is Meshery. We had announced a partnership with SMI, this last KubeCon EU. And so the spec is now being advanced some, which is good. But my point is that even with this spec, really each of the service meshes themselves are unique and need to be interfaced with specific to that service mesh. Now, given CPX's deployment in context of an Istio deployment, the nice thing is that it'll end up looking a lot like the Istio adapter, and doing most of the same things that the Istio adapter does. It would just, there'll be some slight tweaks. So a couple of things that adapters are capable of. So not only do they speak the language, to the specific APIs or to the specific capabilities of a given type of service mesh, but each of these adapters are capable of interfacing with more than one deployment of a given mesh. So you might deploy Istio in one cluster, and maybe you've got Istio, a second Istio in a different cluster. You don't necessarily need to deploy multiple adapters in order to interface with those clusters, or rather, I should say, the design is such that you don't have to. Today, as a user, you probably would. You would deploy two adapters, point one at one cluster, one at the next. So you can have multiple adapters of the same type deployed. At some point, though, we'll make it much better in the UI to let you know that you can just have one adapter of a given service mesh deployed. So in the case of CPX, it's like one CPX adapter deployed, and then you could still interface with any number of different environments, like any number of different clusters that are running Istio CPX. For each of the adapters, if you click on them, Meshery will just do a quick ping test, just a quick test to say that Meshery itself can talk to its own adapter, because those are deployed in independent containers. And so it's just a quick test. When people go to run Meshery for the first time, they end up configuring configuring how Meshery is running. Usually that starts by pointing it at a Kubernetes cluster. You either hand it your kubeconfig file, or it will auto-detect your local kubeconfig and load it up for you. And kind of depending upon whether or not you're running Meshery inside your Kubernetes cluster or outside your Kubernetes cluster, you'll have a different experience. You'll go over and load up your adapters if you need to, if Meshery didn't auto-discover them, which it should be. You can test and load them up. If you've got Grafana or Prometheus running, you can point Meshery at those endpoints, and it'll pull back a lot of performance data. And performance is a whole separate area within Meshery, letting people do tests and understand the performance of the meshes. This performance area is almost entirely not built into the adapter. Like, the adapter doesn't need to consider this. There's just a small bit of it that's in there. The one thing probably, Diraj, for where the CPX adapter will differ from the Istio adapter is really in the configuration of the Istio deployment, that it will, it would have your admission webhooks and your, I'm assuming that you guys, the part of that Citrix Istio adapter has a sidecar injector.
That's correct.
Okay. And so,
yes.
Yeah, it'll be this is fantastic, because the Meshery adapter works very much as a template for the CPX one. But there's certain operations that each adapter support, and that's just kind of life cycle management of deploying a service mesh of that type, or deleting, so deploying or removing. Once a service mesh is deployed, like deploying a couple of sample apps on top of it, like the book info app that you're probably familiar with, or removing that sample app. We've got a couple of built-in configurations that can be pushed to Istio in this case. And this is really around helping people come to understand book info and using book info as the example. And so, yeah, there's one thing that's unique there's two things that are unique to the Istio adapter that's a bit more powerful than some of the other adapters. Most of the other adapters just have the ability to install the mesh, install sample applications, and apply custom configuration if you're looking to push over a given set of config, a given manifest. Istio is a bit more powerful, or this adapter is a bit more powerful, because it has these two other things: the ability to apply some config Granted, this is somewhat static in nature and it's just pre-configured things. The second thing that it has the ability to do is run, in this case, it's Istio Vet. It's a set of best practices that are used to analyze the configuration of the Istio deployment. And in this case, there are 9 vetters, like 9 best practices that are run as checks to make sure that you're running your Istio in the configured in the best of ways. And so this vetter will work for the CPX adapter as well, because it will be, since it's running on Istio. Good. So Dheeraj, I hope that helps just give you a quick tour of the.
Thanks, Lee. That was helpful. You are correct. I think my hunch is also that this Meshery Citrix will be a lot more like the Meshery Istio itself, and I will be like taking a glance at that one.
Nice. Okay, good. Okay, let me stop sharing and ask Girish if you happen to be in a position to show some new things for performance testing for load generation. So the load generator, so Girish is on mute, but hopefully while he's getting ready, the load generator that's built into Meshery today is called Ford.io. It was created around the Istio project. And so we just chose to use that one initially. There's a bunch of load generators out there. Hopefully we're using it today to generate HTTP traffic, but hopefully in the future to generate gRPC traffic, and maybe in the future some NATS traffic, and then measure the latency and the throughput of that type of traffic. And if for those who, we've talked on this call in the past about some analysis, some research that the Buoyant team had commissioned a consultancy called Kinvolk to do some performance tests of Linkerd, and they used a different load generator. The load generator that they had used is called WRK, specifically WRK2 actually. And so one of the Google Summer of Code interns from this last summer, Sako, who most of you guys know, he had been working on building in support for WRK2. And Girish, I think, is on the brink of finishing it off. So.
Excellent. So yes, whatever Lee said is right. So unfortunately, this piece is not yet completely integrated with Meshery, but I can give you a high-level direction as to what will be my next steps. Now, to give you guys an overview, so we have a project. It's called the Go WRK2. If you guys have looked in the Layer 5 IO GitHub org, you will also find another repo called WRK2. Now, the WRK2, if you guys go inside, you will see that it's a fork from the Kinvolk's WRK2, just like what Lee said, with some minor changes, which were mostly in the Lua script. Now, here is the Go WRK2, which I've made quite some changes, up against, what was done by Sako. The first thing was actually to make it more like a library. So here, if you guys can see the screen, I'm just going to try to make it much more readable, hopefully. So fundamentally, I'm trying to keep it simple. So there are 2 methods, or 2 functions. One is WRK run, and the other one is a transform WRK to Ford.io. The first one, WRK run, is very simple. As you can see, it actually loads a Lua script, and then it executes WRK. Of course, WRK should pre-exist. And here, you can see the WRK is already loaded in a repo, in a local folder. So, my references will be relative. So fundamentally what this does is it actually takes in a bunch of arguments, which is very identical to what the Ford.io does. like the threads, the duration, the connections, the requested QPS, the URL, etc. And then along with that, the Lua script is loaded. Now, the Lua script is very crucial because what the Lua script does is it actually transforms the results into a JSON, and also it actually is where the mappings really happen, which is from the traditional WRK results to a JSON format. Now, the first function here, like the WRK run, essentially that's what it does. It executes it, and then so here I have a structure that's defined, which is a mapping for the results. So you can see all the fields that are extracted from the WRK results, and then the percentile information, which is actually loaded here as an array. Now, what this does is it executes it, gets a JSON, which is with the help of the Lua script, and then finally, what we get here at this stage will actually be a JSON, in the form of a string. And then what we do next is actually try to marshal it into a struct because it's much easier to work with a struct. And again, the struct definition is right here. And it's of course much more readable this way to work with. The next one is I have a separate method, separate function called transform WRK to Ford.io, which essentially takes a Go WRK and then returns a HTTP runner result, which is part of the Ford.io's result supported result formats. One is a HTTP runner result and the other one is a gRPC. Now WRK works for as far as I know, it works with HTTP. So what I've tried to do here is transform the results into the appropriate format. So here is actually a sample Ford.io result, on the right. This is the traditional Ford.io result. So for a particular example, here we have the result. And then I have this other file, which I've been working with, I've called this the analysis.txt essentially. So what this does is I've taken the WRK output, I've tried to map it to the respective fields, and then I'm trying to see how I can, this is how I work through the whole thing. And yesterday, and here is the rest of the code, which does that. I'm not going to walk you through the rest of the code, but rather I have a setup, which in order to make my life a lot easier to work with yesterday, I have created a fundamental base image with WRK bundled and Go installed in the same one, so I don't have to have WRK on the local. So if I say make Docker run, what it's going to do is it's going to preload the image with WRK, which is already being built on the local, and then it's going to load the Go code, which I just showed you guys, and if you guys can see it, it's created as a module, like a Go module, so it's easier to work with that way, and I also have a makefile, very simple. It's not fancy. The first one is the get WRK, because fundamentally for this one to work, I think I already mentioned we need a relative WRK2 instance, so which is the reason why I have the WRK2 repo cloned here. So if it's not already there, I have a simple makefile command, which helps you to get it. And then the base build image is actually the one that's going to actually, build the base WRK image. I created a Docker file for that, which is right here. It's as simple as, take, pre-install some stuff, for building WRK, and then along with that, it'll set up Go, and then the make command will actually build the WRK. That's pretty much what this image does. So fundamentally, it doesn't run anything. It just preloads WRK. It builds WRK inside the container and also has Go installed. And now, as my next step, which is a Docker run, what this does is it actually takes that base image and then, essentially, you can see, I have a volume mount which pretty much loads my Go code inside. There's not much for the Go code here, so which is the reason why it'll be much faster. And then at the end, I'm running it, so every time I do this, it just runs a container, and then preloads, the libraries that are needed. Of course, this can be optimized, but I mean, this was done just yesterday, so this is where I have. So as you can see, the test did run, and let me just show you the main file here to give you some relevance. So keeping it simple, I have thread count 2, duration 5, which is a 5-second duration, and then 10 connections, 10 requests, 10 queries per second requested, and a simple URL, I'm using Gmail. And then here is how we invoke it, the API WRK run with all these parameters. And the first part, I just want to ensure that the WRK result is coming back. So, I'm printing it out, and then I'm giving it to the other function I have, which will transform the WRK result to a Ford.io compliant result. And then at the end, I'm trying to dump it, using a library, so so that people can actually see it in the command line. So when I just ran it, of course, it'll look like there was a lot, but it's interesting to actually process the whole thing. I'm just going to maybe rerun it, so it's just easier. Sorry. All right. So the make run, you can see that it'll first get the modules, which for now this is not too bad. We don't have too many dependencies in this repo. So and then it'll actually make a call to Gmail multiple times. It'll essentially run the load test against Gmail, and then it'll actually give us an output in the JSON format, which I'm trying to show you guys. And unfortunately, it looks like I'm hitting some limits. So I'm going to stream it to a log file, including the errors, and then let's take a look at it once it's run. It'll say it. Take just another second. I'm sorry. I didn't expect it to cause an overflow. All right. So we have the file loaded. So you can see here, this first part, the receipt output, is actually the output we get from the WRK, but there, you can see the result is JSON formatted. We have a lot of data coming out. I mean, earlier we did not, I tweaked it a bit to get a little more data so we can actually chart it nicely, essentially. So that's what this whole section is. And then it ends here. And then this line here, essentially, it tries to map it, tries to unmarshal it to a struct. And that's what this is. Now, finally, here is my Ford.io result, which I've dumped. So you can see this is actually the Ford.io's HTTP runner results format. And you can see how the data is actually loaded. There definitely are some empty fields, which I'm trying my best to extract, but you can see all the other fields which have been populated with values. So the reason why we had to do this was that Meshery is actually, especially the user interface is built off of Ford.io's charting framework, and then we extended it and then customized it. So but fundamentally the underlying data format we readily accept is actually a Ford.io one. So in order to make our lives a lot easier, I thought it's much easier to do the transformation in the back rather than send it to the UI and have a separate branch of code to deal with it. So essentially you can see here, here we have the code which does the transformation, and it's ready to pretty much be accepted in the UI now. So all I have to do now is that the library is ready. I have to load it into Meshery and then connect the dots a bit, and hopefully in the next few hours I'll have something functional. So we can start using WRK as a load generator option right from there. So that pretty much concludes my demo. I think I've already spoken a lot about it, but that's pretty much it for the WRK demo. Anything else you guys want to see? Let me know.
Yeah, questions for Girish? I mean, one of those questions that I would expect some of you guys might have is just, I know we've talked about this a bit in the past, but still a question of well, there's already a load generator in Meshery. Well, why is there the need for a second type of load generator? And what will be the difference between them?
So one of the interesting things with WRK is, or especially the one which the Kinvolk guys forked from, is actually there is a concept called the coordinated omission. And rather than me explaining it, I think you guys will be better off reading about it. But the way the coordinated omission works is that it actually tries to better simulate a real world scenario wherein when a lot of requests come in, the server actually sometimes it actually puts them in a queue sort of way of processing it, as a result of which the first query might actually take 10 milliseconds, but the second query might take 20 milliseconds, and then the problem is the rest will actually have a consequent impact on the way the responses come back from the server. So coordinated emission kind of respects that when it's actually doing a load test, while the other load generators kind of in a heartless manner, they try to hit the server with requests based on whatever is requested. So it's based on the number of queries per second, number of threads, number of connections, all that put together. It actually tries its best to do its job fairly well. but coordinated omission is probably not considered in most of those load generators. Like, so for example, with Ford.io, as far as I know, I mean, it's been a while, like, and I went back to Ford.io's documentations, but as far as we know, like, Ford.io doesn't consider coordinated omissions, or WRK2 is pretty much the only one we know of, like, which does that. So in order to kind of, bring, I know a lot of people out there who are interested in load tests, like, do like concepts like this to be considered, like, when performing a load test, which is the reason why we are actually trying to bring in another load generator so that people who are interested in using this instead of the default ones, sure can. So I hope, that gives like a very high level answer. Of course, there's much more, I would recommend you guys to actually go and give it a read. But yeah.
Yeah, I get. I have to say, every time, if a month passes between the last time I looked at coordinated omission, and then I've got to go back and reread what the heck it means, or
Absolutely.
yeah, or even that term itself, coordinated omission. So that's cool. One thing about the WRK2 work is that I know the IBM group that works on Istio's load performance and scaling, that they're highly interested in the notion that Meshery now becomes, that the load generators now become swappable, because they have one that I think that they'd like to use within Meshery. So that's exciting. Last thing maybe that I showed this earlier on the call, but I don't know if everyone that's on now was on then. But I said that Forrester, a principal analyst there, had used the layer 5 service mesh landscape as a reference for writing up a report, and then also for giving a webinar. And these are the slides from, and so the webinar was plan a service mesh for your microservices future. Forrester from Mr. Hefner. He's in Dallas, Texas, so he's not that far from me. But all of these will be familiar to you. Actually, D-Raj, I think your update on the landscape came in just after he was done doing research here. So CPX just missed the listing. But point is, again, I just wanted to share with you all that your work is being represented, that Meshery is here as an open source project. Meshery is here as a manager of multiple meshes, which was a bit of a new concept, I think, for the researcher. He had considered that that Meshery was like a service mesh itself, and so okay, yeah. Now I'm deciphering what he's got here. So I think, the service mesh hub. This is funny. Like, yeah, he's got this listed as a manager of managers. Anyway, that group said that they're going to have an announcement at KubeCon about Service Mesh Hub, and I believe the announcement is that it'll be multi-tenant. So they actually pre-announced that at All Things Open a couple of weeks ago. So good. Let me shut my yapper and say, hey, so one, just stoked that D-Raj is here, stoked that Raghav is here. Raghav, if you have more time after this call, we can continue our conversation. This is good. Also, Pavan. Okay, good. Pavan, first time that your PR has landed. So, Pavan, you've been here a really long time, but I'm happy for you. Stoked that you're enhancing the project like that around EKS support. It was actually a point of friction and pain when we were giving a workshop at All Things Open. Somebody wanted to interface Meshery with EKS, and we didn't have a convenient script for them to do that. So thanks for that.
No problems anytime.
So as I look over the folks and the names on this call, I don't know if anyone, some of you have been unfortunate enough, I think Anand and Nikhil, no, I'm sorry, Anand and Subham, to suffer from like me having sent you one of this little book before. But I think so most of you saw that this book also came out, and I'm considering that probably each of you need to have one of these, and most of you have filled out the forms that we send around for the community. So I think we have the mailing addresses for most of you, and so I might find myself at the post office for a few hours trying to get you guys some copies, because again, your work is represented in there. Meshery is represented in there a couple of times, so you should be proud of it. It'd be cool when you guys have got it. And D-Raj, we'll get you on second edition, man. We'll get you on.
Great. Look forward to it.
Yeah. Anybody have anything else? Just either things on Meshery or in general stuff that we've got. Chaim, we've got one last item that slipped my mind, and that is to expose Meshery or Octarine in the UI. Very simple thing to do. We just need to cut a new release to get it out there, and we'll have it for KubeCon.
Hopefully I'll be able to take care of that today.
Nice. D-Raj, who all else is going to be at KubeCon from Citrix?
So I personally won't be there in the KubeCon. I'm in Bangalore, but Chiradeep and probably a couple of guys from Citrix should be there.
Okay. Oh, that's right. Chiradeep was asking me for Service MeshCon tickets. I forgot about that. Yeah. Good. And Chaim, you'll be at KubeCon as well.
Of course.
Of course, yeah. Good. Girish, you'll be at KubeCon. Good deal. Okay.
So KubeCon is in India. Like, when is that?
You know, there actually was a Kubernetes Days in India. I think in Bangalore, like a little over a month or so ago. But this KubeCon is in North America. It's in San Diego in just about a week. So not this coming week, but the following. And so yeah, it's just around the corner. I got to tell you, of the various open source groups or communities that I'm involved in, there's been a lot of conference-driven development happening. A lot of people trying to get things done before the conference. So I think, D-Raj, I think you were saying you're in that boat too. So, all right, very good. So speaking of, we will definitely have the community call this coming Friday, but the next Friday, both myself and Girish will be at KubeCon. We'll definitely send a note if we're unable to attend, and probably cancel the call but just a heads up as a potential. Okay, good to see all you guys. Catch you same time next week. All right.
See you guys.
Bye guys. Bye.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Nuno, I've got something for you actually. And Nuno, I've got something for you. Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
So a couple of things. One is
मीटिंग छोड़ी क्या मेरा ज्वाइन किया हुआ है.
Good deal. Okay, so one of the things is that I'm hoping to finish up a conversation with Raghav. Girish, could you message Raghav and ask him to come back on this call? Raghav wants to participate in the community through Google Summer of Code. So that's awesome. I mean, it's great. Nuno, the reason I was calling out your name, Nuno, was because did I ever show you the video of creating the layer 5 buttons?
No,
Okay.
not the video. No.
There's a big bag of buttons that some of them have your name on them that we need to send to you.
Okay.
But
thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
Oh, the button when okay, yeah, you saw, you sent it to me, or I saw it.
Saw that,
yeah,
yeah.
definitely. Sorry.
No, yeah. So we've just been, a lot of those are being mass produced by my 6-year-old daughter. So,
Nice.
yeah, the little sweatshop never hurt anybody.
Child labor though, but nice.
She was only crying half the time she was having to do it. It wasn't that bad. No.
It's okay. Alpha time, it's okay.
Yeah.
Bearable. Nice. Do you have like couple minutes,
Yeah.
both of you, actually?
Yep.
Okay. So very quickly, just my mouse decided to actually. Okay. Mouse.
Lee,
Yeah.
we have to learn from, really. I mean, he does everything very differently. You can see his headset has a light. It's like as though